Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. This week we're going to be talking about replacing planks in wood flooring, and we'd like to thank Dylan Beatty for this topic. We got a few new 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts, and we really appreciate it. When early American colonists created planks for flooring, they usually were cut at random widths and lengths and left unfinished, and they'd be worn smooth over time just from wear. In the 1800s, wood floors were hand-scraped and sand was rubbed on the floor to smooth the surface. The first tongue and groove floorboards were made at the end of the 1800s when machines were developed to create the tongue and the groove. Rectangular-shaped nails were used into the early 1900s to hold floorboards into place. The first round nails were made at the beginning of the 1900s.
Exciting.
The National Wood Flooring Association said 52% of homeowners interviewed have wood floors in their homes. Homeowners who were asked what kind of flooring would be in your dream home, 66% said they'd have wood floors. The National Association of Realtors found 54% of home buyers were willing to pay more for homes with hardwood floors. They say hardwood floors can add 2.5% to the value of your home when you sell, and expect to recoup 70 to 80% of the cost if you upgrade to wood floors before you sell.
Interesting.
We've talked about types of wood flooring and installation in previous episodes. This week we'll just talk about replacing individual planks if you have wood flooring. And I've had to replace quite a few boards over the years in these properties I bought while I was investing in real estate. Some of these old homes would have holes in planks where baseboard heat pipes were removed. Some had boards that were either cupped or crowned from water leaks. And a couple of houses had large areas of wood that swelled up and buckled from water.
What's cupping?
Cupping is when the sides of your wood planks lift up and they're higher than the center of the plank. It can create a gap between the planks, and it can also just create an uneven floor, depending on how much that wood swells on the bottom of the board. And it's primarily caused from moisture under your flooring if you have cupping. If you have a basement or crawl space below your wood floors and the humidity levels are too high under the wood, that moisture can move up through the subfloor and cause cupping. With wood flooring, you need to control moisture. The National Wood Flooring Association says your indoor humidity levels should be between 30 and 50% to protect your hardwood floors. The temperature range should be between 60 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Engineered hardwood floors can tolerate a higher humidity level, but 30 to 50% humidity is a good range for all of your wood furniture and cabinets and for your health. If your crawl space or your basement has high humidity, you can use a dehumidifier or a ventilation system to bring it down so that moisture isn't migrating up to your wood floors. Easy Breathe, it's capital E, capital Z, capital BREATHE. They have basement and crawl space ventilation systems. And Churnland, it's TJERNLUND. They have crawl space fans to reduce humidity levels. I spoke to the company ThermoPro about monitoring humidity levels for hardwood floors. They have a wireless indoor-outdoor humidity and temperature monitor that comes with a remote sensor. So the main hygrometer can be kept in your living space, and this remote sensor...
Everybody should have a hygrometer.
Everyone should have a hygrometer if you have anything wood in your home. So this hygrometer is pretty cool. This remote sensor can be placed in your basement or crawl space if you're having problems with moisture coming up from underneath your hardwood floors. The main unit has an LCD display that shows the temperature and humidity for both areas. So this is an easy way to keep track of your humidity levels above and below your flooring to help protect it. ThermoPro is THERMO, capital PRO. Some other top-rated hygrometers come from Accurite. It's ACURITE, Taylor, TAYLOR, and X-Tech, Extech. If you do have a slight cupping in your wood floors and you bring down the humidity levels in your crawl space or basement, generally it'll flatten out, but if it doesn't, you may have to sand it smooth.
Okay.
Crowning is another moisture problem. This is when the center of the board is higher than the edges, and this is usually caused by moisture on top of the board. So the board is absorbing water and it's swelling up in the center, where cupping, it absorbs water on the bottom.
Right.
And the edges swell up. Pretty interesting, isn't it? So if you have a water leak somewhere, let's say around a dishwasher or a sink where it's slowly leaking on it over time, it can, cause it to swell and damage a plank. The National Wood Flooring Association says wood floors can show gaps when humidity levels are too low. So shrinking begins when humidity levels drop below 30%. So if you have too much moisture, it swells, and too little moisture, then it starts to shrink. If you plan on installing wood flooring, wide boards tend to move more than narrower boards. They're going to expand and contract depending on the humidity levels. And in cold climates, where you're going to have a fluctuation of humidity levels, you'd want to use humidifiers and dehumidifiers to keep it in that 30 to 50% humidity range.
Right.
Before you install new wood flooring, check your installation instructions for how long they want the wood to acclimate to the room that they're going to be installed in. I've seen recommendations anywhere from 5 days to 2 weeks.
Crazy.
And if you don't acclimate the wood to the room, it could potentially expand and buckle all of the flooring.
Wow.
If you have one board that's damaged or a couple of boards that need to be removed, there's a few different ways to remove the boards depending on the tools you have. When I first started investing in real estate, my business partner and I would hire professionals to teach us how to do all these repairs.
Smart.
One of the first carpenters that showed me how to remove an individual board used a circular saw that he adjusted to the depth of the board. He made 3 cuts lengthwise, parallel to the long edges of the board, spaced equally, and he would end as close to the end as he could. Then he would make 2 diagonal cuts across those 3 cuts, coming very close to the sides. He used a chisel to pry out the center pieces, and then he worked out the pieces. He could find out which side had the groove, and he would just break and pull those free. The side with the nails in it, which is the side with the tongue, he would then use his chisel, and he emphasized you need to have a very sharp chisel, and he would break sections apart, being careful not to hit the other wood, and as he broke those apart, he would just work it carefully, and he emphasized be very patient when you're doing this.
Because you don't want to screw up the rest of the wood that's staying there.
Right, so you don't want to start prying and pulling the wood, use your hammer, and try to pry it free. You just want to work it loose. And any nails that remained, he would use a locking pliers, grab onto them, and then wiggle them free. Another method I've seen with a circular saw is 2 parallel lines parallel to the long ends, about a ½ an inch from the edge. Then you do 2 diagonal cuts from one corner to the other corner, making an X over those parallel cuts, and you're trying to get as close to the end as you can with that X. You pull out the center, and then you work out the pieces. You can use a chisel to chop them down and break them into smaller pieces. Another technique I've seen is taking a ½ an inch or a 3/4 inch paddle bit and drilling 3 holes in each end of the board, about a ½ an inch from the sides and the end for the 2 corners, and then 1 hole in the center of those 2. You take a circular saw and create a cut from one hole to the other hole, so from one side all the way across, parallel to the long edge, and then you're going to be able to pull out the center, again using a chisel to kind of chop it free. So that's kind of an interesting technique. If you have an oscillating multi-tool, you can cut a couple lines down the length with a circular saw and then use an oscillating multi-tool to remove small sections, and that's going to help prevent damage to the pieces because you have a little more control with that. To help protect the boards you aren't removing, use wide painter's tape all along the edge of the boards, around the boards you're removing. Keep your tools on a cloth drop cloth. Wear safety glasses and a disposable respirator whenever you're cutting into wood, an N95. Have knee pads or a kneeling pad, makes it more comfortable to do it. Use cut-resistant work gloves and get a really good quality chisel. Some top-rated chisels come from Work Pro. It's WORK, capital PRO. Narex, it's NAREX. Buck Brothers, BUCK. Von Haus, VON, capital HAUS. Stanley, and DeWalt. When you remove the damaged board, you generally want to leave any asphalt paper or vapor barrier under it. If you have an underlayment like cork, you'd want to replace that. That's why you want to set the depth of your circular saw to the depth of the board. You don't want to cut too deep. If you have a board that's been glued down, you can use a pull and pry bar in the center once you've made all your cuts to pull out that middle section, or you can use a chisel to break free one area in the center and then use a pull and pry bar and a hammer to pry loose other pieces. An oscillating tool really does a nice job if you have glued down wood, because you can break this into smaller sections and have a lot more control. Once you get the wood up, then you can use a chisel, a small thin pry bar, a scraper to scrape free all of the old glue. And if you can't get the tongue out of the groove on the piece that you're leaving, you can use either a very sharp chisel and work that free and just cut off that tongue, or use an oscillating multi-tool and just cut it smooth. So that's a pretty handy tool to have.
Apparently.
You can also get a scraper blade to attach to an oscillating multi-tool to scrape up any glue on the subfloor. Some top-rated oscillating multi-tools come from Bosch, BOSCH, DeWalt, capital DE, capital WALT, and Ryobi, RYOBI. For your replacement board or boards, you want the same width, length, thickness, type of wood, and grain type. So when you stain it and finish it, it looks the same. You can take a picture of your floor to a lumber yard or a home center, or bring a piece that you removed. A lumber yard will usually have a better selection and the staff to help you pick the replacement boards. If you're putting in a new wood floor, you should keep a few boards in case you have a problem ever. And you can always cut down the length of a board with a miter saw or a table saw to fit. Hardwood Floors magazine suggests letting the new boards acclimate in the room that you're going to be installing them in for at least a week. The board should be within 2% of the moisture content of the neighboring boards, so you can use a wood moisture meter. Some top-rated meters come from Wagner, WAGNER, Calculated Industries, that's CALCULATED Industries, Klein Tools, KLEIN, and Amprobe, AMPROBE. For hardwood tongue and groove boards, you have a tongue on two sides and a groove on two sides. To drop a single board in place, you're going to remove the bottom of the groove on both sides. So you're going to cut that off with a saw. And you may have to remove the tongue on the short side, depending on how long and how thick the wood is. For some pieces, you might be able to cut down the tongue on the short side on both ends. So you would cut off a small amount on both sides and just leave a short tab in the middle on the short side of the tongue. And you might be able to work that in. That's going to give you a little more holding power, but you should test fit it first. Many times you're just going to have to cut that tongue off on the short side and then the bottom of the groove on both sides. If you have a board that was glued in place and you had to remove the tongue, you cut it off, you're going to have to cut off the tongue on the new piece.
Why?
So it drops in place.
Okay, so otherwise it's going to hit it.
Right. Most carpenters will use wood glue or construction adhesive to hold the piece in place. If the board is going over a plywood subfloor with no underlayment, run a bead of your adhesive under the board and on the tongue of the existing flooring, and then work your board in place. Set some heavy objects on the board overnight till it cures. On a Carpenters Forum I was reading, one carpenter said construction adhesive will allow for better expansion and contraction than wood glue. Another carpenter said he likes Tight Bond 3 because it allows for some expansion and contraction. It creates a very solid bond, and it's much easier to clean up if you have any excess on your wood.
Okay.
A couple carpenters said if you have underlayment or vapor barriers to use wood glue all around the edges and then face nail with a couple finishing nails, and that will hold it in place if you plan on refinishing the floor. A couple said never face nail in the field unless the entire floor is face nailed. And if you're replacing a few boards, blind nail and replace the boards that can be positioned without removing the bottom of the groove side, and then glue or face nail that last piece.
Okay, what is this nailing stuff that you're talking about?
Blind nailing is where you put a nail through the tongue at an angle, so when you put your next piece in, you can't see the nail. So it's pretty cool.
Still don't know why it's called blind.
You can't see it?
Well, hidden nailing would be better.
Yes. Face nailing is just putting a nail through the face, the top of the board, and then you're generally going to indent that and put some wood putty over it, and then refinish it, and you won't see it. Nails are going to allow more movement of the board for expansion and contraction. Staples, they found, don't allow as much movement and can cause cracking or squeaking, depending on your humidity levels and the type of wood.
Interesting.
If you have engineered wood flooring with click-lock ends, you would remove an individual plank the same way. But with this type of flooring, the tongue and groove ends have a different look. One side has an overhang with a narrow tongue. The other side has a groove that extends past the top. And with this type of flooring, rather than removing the bottom of the groove, you're going to actually remove the tongue on engineered wood floors with the click-lock ends. And you can use a utility knife working carefully all along the plank. And when you remove the tongue on both sides, that piece will just drop right into your flooring. So it fits really nice. Check with the manufacturer, though, on the recommended glue to hold the planks together. Some want specific tongue and groove glue that's designed for these engineered wood floors.
Okay. Do you have anything else to add?
When you're making your cuts with a circular saw, you're going to have to do a plunge cut. So you're going to put the front edge of the shoe on the board. You're going to have the back end of the saw up in the air. You're going to lift up the guard and then turn on the saw. When the blade is moving at full speed, you're slowly going to lower it down into the wood and then push it forward.
Okay.
And make sure you hold on tight. If you're putting in new flooring, whether it's hardwood, engineered wood, luxury vinyl planks, or laminate, keep some extra planks.
Right.
Because if you ever damage something, it's nice to have something that's going to fit perfectly.
Right.
Just recently, I have laminate in my kitchen, and I was moving some tools from my downstairs into the garage, and I was holding on to a couple of things, and I dropped my cordless drill with a Phillips bit in it straight down into the laminate.
Nice.
And I made a nice hole. So I did a nice repair on that. Maybe we could talk about another episode. But it would be nice to have an extra plank if you do some damage.
Let's wrap this up.
You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, CastBox, or your favorite podcast app.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And you can subscribe to that as well.
You can download our ebooks, Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, books 1 through 12 on Amazon, soon book 13.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star rating and review.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow Cindy on Twitter at FixItCohost, and you can follow us on Instagram, Fix It Home Improvement.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.